Okay, I'm going to get started now. So thank you for joining me for Module 6 of the ETEP online training series. And we are moving right along. So this is the same disclaimer that I've shown for all the other webinars. That just indicates that I'm not the EPA. And just a brief course overview about where we've been and where we're going to. So Module 1, we kind of did the basics of just understanding ETEP requirements and some initial scoping. Module 2, we dove a bit deeper into developing the Tribal Environmental Plan portion of the ETEP, so focusing on Component 1. Module 3 was the information gathering part of that, and then beginning to develop the ETEP Strategic Work Plan where the information is going to go into. This is again all part of component number 1. In Module 4, we had a Q&A session, and I did some demonstration of some of the process of researching and populating an ETEP Strategic Work Plan, and actually did a lot of covered some recurring and common objectives and how to organize and manage those in the plan. Module 5, the last module, went over developing and implementing a complementary strategic plan. So you have your ETEP Strategic Work Plan, which is kind of the nuts and bolts of how you're going to actually accomplish your strategic plan, which is a shorter overarching document, which provides the purpose, goals, and also can involve doing a SWOT analysis and focusing on vision and values as well. This module, we're going to discuss preparing and finalizing a full ETEP, covering the other components that are required by the GAP guidance. In Module 7, I'm going to do a presentation on utilizing, reviewing, and updating your ETEP and strategic plan, so how to put these in practice and how to maximize their value. And then we'll conclude with Module 8 with a 60-minute Q&A session, and if there aren't any questions and answers, then we'll probably do some more examples and walkthroughs on that. Okay, so the detailed agenda for today, just briefly cover again kind of course resources and logistics, and but it's really going to be about focusing on finalizing your tribal environmental plan and strategic plan, and the processes of preparing and finalizing and submitting a complete ETEP that includes all 4 components that are required by the GAP guidance. And these are 3 of the additional components we haven't covered. If there's time, I'm going to do some more walkthrough on the ETEP development process. I feel like that's beneficial for you to see how information is gathered and inserted into the ETEP Strategic Work Plan, and then review the assignments and next steps. And there is a post-webinar evaluation. I appreciate that most of you have been taking the time to give me some feedback on what's going well, what's not, and that helps me improve. It also lets me know if you have any questions. Just to reiterate the course resources and logistics, I appreciate that you all have been responding to the doodle polls and registering for these ahead of time. And so, as you know, if you haven't made any of the past webinars and you're unable to make any of the future ones, all of these are recorded and available as on-demand videos. So those are accessible through Vimeo, and so occasionally the passwords do change. The links do remain the same. So if you have problems accessing any of those, then the Google Drive link does change as well. So if you have problems accessing any of these, just make sure you have the latest assignments email, which will have the latest login information. But if you're still having any issues, just let me know, and I will check on it. Somebody pointed out to me they're having some problems accessing some of the Google Sheets, the Google Drive documents, and so I ended up seeing that there was an issue when I transferred them last time to a new link, and but that's all resolved. So let me know. And those documents are available for download as well at any time. And then I will continue to send the assignments and reminders. So if you have any questions, please use the questions box, or any questions or comments. If you want to ask a question and you have some voice capabilities, either through your computer or if you've called in, then raise your hand and I can actually unmute you. But let me know. And so if it's not obvious, hopefully it's obvious where those things are. And then if for some reason if I have any technical difficulties, please just be patient. I usually, if that ever happens, I can get back on within a few minutes, and the webinar won't close until 5 minutes afterwards. If for some reason I'm not able to get on after 5 minutes, then it'll automatically shut down. But if for some reason you stop hearing me, another thing you can do too is send me a text message, or if for some reason there's something happening and you don't think I'm aware of it. It's happened before where in webinars not with this course, my program's crashed, my webinar program crashed, but I didn't know it, and I continued giving the presentation, and thankfully it was recorded, but I didn't actually learn that until after it was until afterwards. So I'm just going to type my my cell phone number into the box below, so if for some reason something comes up, just send me a text and you alert me if some issues are going on. Okay, so now we're going to dive into the meat of the presentation. So at this point, we've gone through the process of developing your ETEP Strategic Work Plan or your Tribal Environmental Plan, same thing, which is the first component of the ETEP. And we also have gone through developing a strategic plan. That was what was covered in the last module. And so before you finalize these things and submit these things to the EPA or the tribe, you'll want to do one final internal review of these documents. And so before you do this, you'll want to incorporate the input from the meetings and strategic planning retreat that you've had. So you'll probably have gotten feedback from staff if you've gone through a strategic planning retreat, if you've met with staff members and other stakeholders. You want to incorporate these into these documents before you submit them for the final review. And then in order to submit them in a way that people can actually print them and edit them, most people don't want to work with an Excel spreadsheet in terms of making edits. And in fact, I don't recommend doing that because you can't track what people have done. I actually recommend converting it into a Word document, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So when you're doing this, you want to have separate Word documents for each program area. And you can accomplish this by using the filtering function in the Excel spreadsheet. So I'm going to pop that open and show you an example of how to do that. And so this only applies if you are actually going to be using the Excel spreadsheet. If you're going to be just doing a Word-based version of your ETEP Strategic Work Plan, then you already have it in a Word document. You don't need to worry about sharing it as much. But you end up losing a lot of the functionality, a lot of what makes this particularly useful and powerful. So, if you're like me, you probably want to have the Excel version be kind of where your main plan is, and then create these documents to share as needed. So I'm going to open up an example of this. So here's one of the examples we've been working off of an example plan. And so, as I mentioned, you want to print these out or create separate documents for each program area. And so what you do is you'd filter out. So in this case, I'm going to make a shareable document just focused on the climate change priority program area. So I'm going to filter out everything else and just do climate change. So all the other program area descriptions are filtered out. In this case, I'm going to filter out the long-term program area goals just so they have the climate change ones. And then over here, I'm going to filter out in the objectives, everything but the climate objectives. I also want to make sure that these are in order from smallest to largest. And I'm going to scroll down here to the plans to manage authorized EPA programs and filter out so I just can see those. So now we have a spreadsheet, zoom out a little bit, that just only is showing the climate related stuff. Climate related description, goals, objectives, and plans to manage authorized programs. Okay, so now that we've done this, one thing that it may actually be you may want to do is also filter out repetitive activities. So I've kind of covered this before, where if you have an activity that you repeat for multiple years in a row. So right here on line 44, preparing and submitting progress reports, financial reports, and drawdown requests related to climate change program area efforts. That's a repetitive activity. So the first year that that activity shows up in this plan, you'd want to include that. But for future years, what I've done to allow you to filter this out, so I have this repeat column right here. And if it's a repeat activity of something that's already been stated, I put yes. So this is the first instance of this one, this reporting one. So that doesn't say yes, but for 2016, it doesn't say yes. But for 2017, 18, and 19, it does say yes. So that's filtered out. And here's another example, annually reviewing and updating the climate change priority program area objectives is a repetitive activity. So there is an instance of this for 2016. It doesn't say yes as a repeat activity, but in 2017 it does say yes. So hopefully that's clear, and that you would have need to have done that, to actually identified and put yes in there, or somehow identify these so you could filter them out. So in this case, I'm going to filter out the yeses and just do the blanks, so the repeat activities are not shown. And you may want to do this when you're sending this around internally, because you want to make this document as easy to go through as possible, especially for stakeholders in tribal leadership, if not staff as well. So they don't really need to see that you're doing reporting every single year. They don't need to see that you're updating the plan every year. You want them to focus on the unique aspects of the plan. So now, actually, let's just show you real quick. I'll zoom out. I won't do that. But basically, it makes the plan a lot easier, a lot shorter, which makes it, a shorter document to review, which people will be more willing and able to review. Okay, so we filtered out the repetitive activities. What you want to do is make sure you change the layout from portrait to landscape in both documents. So what you want to do is in your Excel spreadsheet, you want to make sure that the page layout here is in landscape, not portrait. So you have the wider sheet of paper. And then we're trying to actually move this to a Word document, which we also want to be in landscape format. So you're going to go into the Word document and you're going to change that orientation to landscape as well. So I'm doing this rather quickly. I'm using Microsoft Office 2016. The way to change the layout and do some of the formatting related stuff that I'm doing can vary from program to program. So just realize that you may not do it the exact same way, but the concepts themselves are still the same. So what you're going to do in order to get this into the Word document, you want to make sure that it's not too wide. So one thing I like to do is just I'll enable. You want to make sure in the print format that it's not too wide. So what I'll do is I'll actually enable the print grid lines to see where the printing is going to stop, just to make sure it's the same general margins apply. But anyways, so you also need to decide what information you want to actually include in this document. So let me pop this back open. So you want to adjust the margins for the information you want to share to fit on the print page within an Excel spreadsheet. So really this doesn't apply. So here obviously you're going to include under the description and the first two boxes right here, the orange and the green. You want to include the area, and you actually want to include the column B as well, which is this description and the long-term goals. Really where you're kind of focusing on is this objectives table right here and deciding what information you want to include in here to share to other people. So, there's a lot of columns in the objectives sheet that go on and on and on and on. You don't need or want to share these with people. You really only need to, you want to share the minimum information they're going to want to look at. If you're sharing it internally, I would say really you just need to share the year and the actual objective. So what I may do is I may move this to make this fit the entire thing, knowing that that's the only thing I'm actually going to actually move over to the other table. And then the one below it, again, this is the only, this one's straightforward. So then I'm going to copy this, the information I know I want to share. So it's really just columns A and B, and I'm going to move down to the bottom of the information I want to share, and I'm going to copy. So in this case, I'm just hitting Control C. You can, right click, hit copy. So I'm copying this information, reopening that Word document, and then I'm going to paste it. And so now I have the same exact information in a Word document that's 3 pages long. So it's really easy to share. People are going to have a much easier time looking at this. And so from here, so you've adjusted the margins, you have decided what you want to share, which may be different for different people. So just going back to that real quick, internally, I'll probably decide to only share the year under the objectives table. I'll probably only decide to share the year and the objectives. However, when you submit this to the EPA, you probably are going to not want to submit, you may choose to submit the Excel spreadsheet. The EPA may want to have their own printable versions in Word documents. So in this case, they're actually going to want to see the capacity indicator numbers and the roles as well. So I want to make sure that those fit too. So I might, I may shrink that to make sure those fit within one page too. And so in this case, I would then, if I'm submitting to the EPA, I would copy that information as well. So let's go back here and let's just go back here and let's just replace this. We'll delete all of this and then we'll paste it. And so, we have a document that now has the information the EPA wants to see, that are all the requirements as well. Okay, so we've copied and pasted the information from the Excel spreadsheet into the Word documents. And then you can distribute this electronically, or you can print and distribute the hard copy of the document. So, from here, you can easily just print this or, save it. You can save it as, ETEP Strategic Work Plan - climate change, but, choose whatever name you want for that. And save it as a separate document. One thing, if you're going to share it electronically and people are going to make edits in the document electronically and then email it back to you, I recommend enabling track changes. So if you're on here, you go to review, enable track changes. That way, when they're reviewing it and they want to make some edits, so let's say you're a person who works on the climate change related stuff, looks at this and says, I don't think we can accomplish this in 2016. Like, I really think we should have bumped this back to 2017. So they changed the year, and then they make some other changes as well. So if we can't accomplish that this year, then we're going to change this. So they'll make changes to things throughout the document. If they use track changes, you can see what they've done. So you can review, if you are the director or the manager, you can review these changes and make sure that you actually do want to incorporate them. So one thing, you want to make sure you can see people's changes because you're going to have to decide whether or not to incorporate the changes or not. So, your climate change specialist may say that they want to bump this back by a year, but you're going to say, you know what, we really need to accomplish this in 2016. That's what our funding says. So instead of changing this, you're going to have a conversation with them, like say, we need to accomplish this year. Let's then move something else back into 2017 so you can accomplish this. So that's how you'd use that. And then, you can print it out as well and just have people write stuff in there. You can see it fits on a single sheet. Got 3 pages. Pretty easy to do. So that's how you share it and then get feedback on that. As I mentioned, the approach to doing all this is going to vary depending on what version of Microsoft Office that you have, but it should be, you should be able to identify how to do these things like selecting track changes, adjusting margins, so on and so forth. So you're going to repeat this process for every program area. So coming back here, So we've done that for the climate change one. So now let's focus on the air. Uh, so we'll now create a sheet just for air. Go over here, filter out these, and just do air. Same thing here. So now we have one on air. We'd copy and paste. We got to reselect these, recopy and paste these, and then you create a separate document. So you'd open a new Word document and change make sure it has the correct layout, or at least just make sure it's saved into a new Word document. There's shortcuts around these things as well. You copy this, go back here, paste it, and now you have a separate document focused just on air-related stuff. So hopefully that's straightforward and easy to do, but that makes it so that you don't have to share an Excel spreadsheet with others. So let me close these documents. Say don't save. Okay. All right, so now you have a shareable copy of your TEP that focuses on different program areas, and now you have to decide who you want to share it with. So you definitely want to share it with your environmental department staff. You may choose to share, my recommendation would be to share all program areas with all staff and ask them to give feedback on everything. Even having your water quality specialist give you feedback on let's say you have one that's focused on waste management. Like, it's still good to have all of your staff look at every single section and give you feedback, because they may learn stuff about your program that they didn't see. So actually I see some questions. So Irenia, you ask, should we be saving as well while in and out of these documents? So yeah, when you create the different versions of those, you do want to save them. So I would create the Word version, and I would for the climate change, and I would save a copy for climate change. And then I would create an air resources one, I would save a copy for that. And I would do it for all program areas of the plan. So let's open this back up and just see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 program areas. So you'd have 7 different Word documents saved for this. And then you'd have people do edits in the Word document, and then you come back here and edit the spreadsheet. So your spreadsheet is your master plan. And then that gives you an opportunity to review and see exactly what changes people have made. So does that answer your question? So I guess let me know if it does, and I'll see if it pops up again. Okay, so then you're going to have these 7, in this example, you'll have your 7 separate plans focusing on different program areas that you can then be distributing to others. And so you want to circulate it amongst the environmental staff. And then you also are going to want to circulate it amongst the other stakeholders and partners. So there may be other departments that have overlap with what you're doing. So if you have a water resources program area, you may have a utilities department that actually manages some aspect of your water resources, things like groundwater. You may want their feedback on it. So when you're circulating these to other stakeholders and partners, you may choose to limit which program areas you want to share with them. So if you're just sharing, if your utilities department is just going to be managing water resources related stuff, you may just want to share that particular sheet and not include the waste management, the general, the education outreach, the natural resources, the waste management. So you don't need to share everyone with everybody. And it's going to depend on what the particular stakeholder's interest is and what you want them to review. In some cases, you may want to share with them things that aren't directly relevant to what they do, because they may come up with ideas or just have a better understanding of what your department does. You may choose to share these with a tribal community, the larger tribal community. So I list that as optional. That's up to you whether you want to decide to open that can of worms or not. I only say, opening up that can of worms just because this could be where you don't want the tribal community to really micromanage the environmental office. I feel like this may be getting them involved in the weeds too much, perhaps. It's good for them to have an overarching idea of what's going on. So in this case, you may choose to just share the strategic plan with the outside community rather than the actual tribal environmental plan. So just want to clarify too. So when you're distributing and sharing these documents, you have two different documents you're sharing. You have the tribal environmental plan, which is that spreadsheet that has the series of objectives, and then you have your overarching strategic plan, which is your mission, vision, values, and goals, which is going to be a shorter document that provides more of the high level idea of what you do. So in sharing some of the tribal community, my recommendation would be just share the strategic plan rather than the full plan, the tribal environmental plan. But if your community is relatively small or you really want to get their feedback, then you can share that as well. I'm not opposed to getting additional feedback. And also, I would share it with all the other stakeholders in the community first, and then once you get their feedback and update the plan based on the feedback from 1 through 3, then share it with tribal leadership. So your executive committee or your elected tribal council, and get their feedback and incorporate that into the plan. So yeah, you'll be gathering that feedback and then incorporating it into these documents to finalize your tribal environmental plan and strategic plan. But remember that these documents are supposed to be living, adaptable documents. So they're not meant to be perfect, and they're going to change over time. So don't fret, don't spend too much time on trying to perfect things. Don't try to get every single detail perfect. You're going to keep coming back to these again and again. And once your plan is finalized, something's going to change out in the world anyways, and you're going to need to change the plan anyways. Okay, so here let's just do a reminder. So up until this point, this training series is focused on developing your tribal environmental plan. So your ETEP Strategic Work Plan or Tribal Environmental Plan is component 1 of the gap guidance requirement for an ETEP. So that is the identification of tribal environmental program priorities, including capacity building and program implementation goals. Component 1 is should be 95% of the effort you're putting into this. But now we're at the point where we're finalizing and putting the whole plan together. We're going to now come back to the other components. So component number 2 is the identification of the EPA's program priority and management requirements. So component number 1 focused on the tribes, and now number 2 focuses on what the EPA's priorities are going to be. Component number 3 is the inventory of regulated entities. And component number 4 is the identification of the mutual roles and responsibilities. And we're going to get into detail on each of these in just a moment. So ETEP or EPA Region 9 did develop a workflow that shows this process in a nutshell, which I actually do think is good, and I think it's really going to apply to essentially the concepts will apply to every region. The documents themselves may be different, and I'm going to talk about why. But this is the document I shared, I think, in Module 1 of this training series. And very simply, this is the flow. EPA tasks right here, tribal tasks right here, covers the whole thing in a nutshell. We'll come back to this document in a minute. Here's the link to that document, and I've also included a copy of that in the Google Drive. Okay, so focusing on finalizing the Tribal Environmental Plan / ETEP Strategic Work Plan, which is what you need to do to complete component number 1 of the gap guidance requirements. The first step is developing the draft Tribal Environmental Plan. That's what the course has been about up until this point. So now once you've developed that plan, you're going to submit that draft plan to the EPA. When you submit this plan, my recommendation is to ask EPA to identify the objectives that are not gap eligible. So, I'd actually like to see, if I'm a tribal environmental director, I want to know what's going to be eligible for funding and what's not going to be eligible for funding. just because it's eligible doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be funded by GAP. It just means that it can be funded by GAP. So I would like the EPA to identify which objectives are not going to be GAP eligible, because I don't want to think that something is going to, is eligible for GAP funding and it's not. And then, it gets closer and now it's like a task I'm planning for next year to do. And I'm including in my GAP work plan. And then the EPA comes back and tells me in my work plan that they can't fund it. I want to know that ahead of time, so I either can remove it from the ETEP or I can pursue a different source of funding to accomplish a particular objective. So the EPA will be reviewing that, making edits and providing comments. The EPA should be identifying the areas, goals, and objectives that are not under its authority. So the EPA's authority the EPA authority encompasses the federal environmental statutory programs. So these are the programs under the Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, RCRA, CERCLA. Things that are not under the EPA's authority are going to be things like cultural resources or natural resources. Natural resources that are focused on wildlife and habitat to a certain extent, but renewable energy to a certain extent may not be. But EPA should be identifying what is not under its authority. But when they do identify things that are not under its authority, they should not be removing these or telling you to remove these from the plan. These things have been identified as tribal priorities and should remain in the plan. So if the EPA is suggesting, if your project officer is suggesting that these things should not be included in the plan, you should tell them that you do want them in the plan, and say that's fine. You've identified that the EPA is not concerned with them. You want this plan to be a management tool, a strategic planning and management tool for yourself, not for the EPA. So you're not developing this plan for the EPA, you're developing it to operate your own programs. So if for some reason they're insisting, at that point I would say get headquarters involved to clarify what can and cannot be included in the plan. My understanding, which has been verified, is that the tribe can include anything it wants in the plan, and the EPA merely just decides what they can or cannot address, but they should leave anything else there. Okay, so then the EPA will submit the plan back to the tribe with its edits and comments, and the tribe will then address those within the TEP, and then it'll revise it and then submit the final to the EPA. So in the workflow, this is what this looks like. All right, so this workflow, like I said, the tasks on the top row are EPA tasks, and the tasks on the bottom row are the tribal tasks. So, you beginning the ETEP development process is initiated. So that's for both people. So the tribe, this is the first tribal task, is developing the draft tribal environmental plan. Preparatory steps may include an environmental inventory, research, and identifying priorities of the council/community. These are all things we've already covered in prior modules. So from there, we're bouncing up to here. EPA is going to review the plan for compliance with the GAP guidance requirements, and then it'll share its comments with the EPA, or with the tribe, I'm sorry. So moving back down here, so all the things we're talking about are the orange boxes. So this is the flow. The flow of component 1 are these orange boxes, or hopefully those look orange to everybody. For colorblind people, they're the lighter boxes. I don't even know how it would appear to a colorblind person. But anyways, so the third step of this process is right down here. The tribe's going to consider those comments on the TEP and make edits that will comply with the guidance in future versions of the tribal environmental plan. So the tribe will then finalize the tribal environmental plan and then include it in the final package. We'll get more into the final package in a few moments. So that's very simple flow of that 4 boxes. You start here, you go up to here, down there, right there. That's the process in a nutshell. This single box right here is 90 to 95% of your work. This is where you should be focusing the vast majority of your effort, and that's what we've already covered. Okay, so priority number 2, component number 2 is focused on the EPA's program priorities. So in this case, the EPA, so I underlined EPA here because the EPA is initiating this portion of it. The EPA review and document tribal status, intentions, and activities with respect to federal environmental programs. Um, so this is their own analysis of what their existing information they have about the tribe's status, intentions, and activities with respect to federal environmental programs. Uh, this is important because these federal statutory environmental programs are the EPA's responsibility by default. If the tribe does not assume the responsibility to manage a particular federal environmental program, the EPA maintains the primary responsibility to implement that particular program. So an example of that would be, so this is, again, these federal statutes, Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, CERCLA, EPCRA, FIFRA, RCRA, Safe Drinking Water Act, TSCA. So an example of this would be under the Clean Air Act, the tribe could assume the responsibility of developing and the tribe could assume the responsibility of developing and managing clean ambient air quality standards. So if the tribes assume that responsibility, the EPA no longer has direct responsibility for implementation of that. If the tribe has not assumed that, the EPA still maintains that. So that's the type of status that their intentions and activities they're going to be reviewing. So reviewing the program implementation activities they're going to be reviewing include permitting, compliance, assurance, and enforcement, developing inventories of regulated entities, issuing identification numbers for regulated entities, issuing certifications, and other activities. So permitting might be whether or not the tribe has assumed responsibility to issue MPDS permits under the Clean Water Act. So compliance would be something like doing inspections for compliance with those permits. So they're going to review all those implementation activities and then identify whether the tribe has assumed responsibility or if there's an intention that they know of that the tribe is going to assume that responsibility. Where they stand with these various things. So this is supposed to be done by the region in coordination with the tribe and with EPA headquarters. I'm not sure to what extent EPA headquarters is being involved in these or they actually need to be involved in this, but I would say that if for some reason you and your region do not see eye to eye about what the EPA is saying, the responsibilities are or should be, or what the EPA's priorities and responsibilities should be, then at that point I would definitely request headquarters involvement and support and their opinion in that. So the goal of this whole process is developing a mutual understanding of the federal environmental protection program implementation requirements, timeframes, roles, and expected results. So in other words, going back here, in terms of the tribal status, intention, and activities, and really the implementation of these federal environmental programs, it's about having a mutual understanding of what the requirements are, who's going to assume responsibilities, what the time frame is going to be, and what results are going to occur. This is also just, number 2 is just, the component number 2 is a precursor to number 4 and relates to it. It's because number 4 is identifying mutual roles and responsibilities. So the process of going through and identifying the EPA's program priorities is going through component number 1 is also, the process of then identifying who's going to assume the roles and responsibilities for each. Okay, so the steps of this in a nutshell. The EPA is going to review and document tribal status, intentions, and activities with respect to applicable federal environmental programs. So EPA is somehow going to start this process. If so you're going to be waiting for the EPA to do this. If your ETEP is done, you want to get this thing finalized, you haven't heard anything from the EPA about component number 2, then you can ask them. In Region 9, this is being done by the EPA is actually submitting to the tribe this document called an areas of involvement. and I want to show you an example of what that looks like. So I'm showing an example from Region 9, um, which kind of shows the content of what types of things are going to be addressed within this type of document. So this document's probably going to be different for each region, and it's really not important to focus on the specific format of these documents, uh, because the EPA is going to initiate this, so you don't have to really worry about exactly what these look like. The EPA is going to be submitting a document to you, and you just wait to see what they submit to you, and then you review it. That's really, it's as simple as that. So here's the document that the Region 9 has been submitting. I think they've been making modifications, so this document may not be the same exact one if you're in Region 9 that you've received or been receiving. I think this is an earlier version of it. But as far as I know, they're still doing, Region 9 is still doing this. So it's kind of a bit of an introduction to what all this means. And then there likely is going to be something where the EPA discusses what's going on with federal environmental programs, with what the tribe is doing, what's the relationship, what's going on. So I've deleted this stuff in here. Like I got this from a tribe, and I deleted information to hide the to hide their information, to hide who this came from. Uh, but so there are going to be various programs. This includes a series of programs. There may be more. There might be like a Brownsfields one. There might be, so there may be additional stuff in here that you don't see. But there'll be a brief explanation from the EPA's perspective of how the EPA is actively engaged with the tribe regarding these particular programs. And then following that, the EPA is going to discuss where they have some direct implementation responsibilities, and then just some general information on what those responsibilities are. So they're going to go through all of the applicable federal statutory programs that apply to the tribe. So while going back to this slide, let's see, sorry, this is not the one I'll look at. Going back here, I listed, I think, most, if not all, of the federal statutory programs. The EPA in this document is probably only going to be including the ones that are relevant. So if there is not going to be anything involving Safe Drinking Water Act, you may not see anything about that in this document, and which is telling too, because if the EPA didn't include a particular statute, that means they don't anticipate you having any activities under that statute. But if let's say the Safe Drinking Water Act is not included here, and you anticipate having Safe Drinking Water Act activities, then you'll want to discuss that with the EPA, make sure that they do include that as well. So Clean Air Act, there's different things under the Clean Air Act, and then they have Clean Water Act. CERCLA, FIFRA, EPCRA, I think was before that, RCRA. So, Safe Drinking Water Act. They probably include all of them anyways. They probably don't omit any of them. TSCA. So they just want to make sure that you're aware of what the roles and responsibilities are, and if you see anything different. So you read through this. If anything needs to be changed, anything is not clear, then you provide that feedback to the EPA. So let me close that document. So let's get back to where we're at. All right, so now the EPA has developed this document. They're going to submit it to the tribe for their review and comments. The tribe's going to review and submit their comments back to the EPA, probably within the document or including it within an email. And the EPA is going to update the document incorporating the feedback the tribe provided. So as I mentioned, it's supposed to be done by the region in coordination with the tribe and potentially the EPA headquarters. Involve EPA headquarters if you need to. But once the EPA is done incorporating the tribe's comments, they finalize the document, then it's going to be ready to be included in the final ETEP package. All right, so component number 3 is going to be the inventory of regulated entities. This is also something that's supposed to be initiated by the EPA, so you're going to wait for the EPA to provide you an initial draft of this inventory as well. So again, that's why, you're just focusing mainly on component number one, the tribals environmental program priorities, and then waiting for the EPA on components number two and three. So the EPA is going to provide a list of known regulated entities to the tribe. These are entities that are regulated under the federal environmental statutory programs. Uh, those are the statutory programs we just discussed: RCRA, CERCLA, Clean Air Act, so on and so forth. Um, if you want, you can look up facilities that the EPA has in their database using this link. Uh, and you can get instructions on how to do that when you go to that link. That's, I think, where the EPA is going to be getting that information from. You can enter, if the EPA hasn't done this, and you're developing your tribal environmental plan, you could enter this as an objective in your ETEP Strategic Work Plan, with the responsibility being the EPA. And then the tribe is going to update. If the tribe can update this inventory with additional regulated entities, and those that can also be entered as an objective. So I'm going to get more into that in a moment. Not only update it with additional entities, but there may be entities you want to remove. The tribe may also want to have a broader inventory. So the EPA is going to focus on entities subject to federal environmental statutes. You may want that are within tribal jurisdiction. So either within your reservation, the trust lands, your pueblo, like whatever, rancheria, whatever your trust lands are. The inventory itself is one the EPA gives you is going to focus on the tribe's jurisdiction. The tribe may want to have a broader inventory that goes maybe even beyond federal environmental statutory regulations. So an example would be there's not going to be anything, the EPA is not going to have an inventory of septic tanks or household wells or off-reservation facilities. So you may want to add an inventory of the septic tanks on the reservation to keep track of those, or individual household wells. This is optional, like, you don't have to do this. This may actually complicate things. One thing that I think would be good to add would be off-reservation facilities. So if there are facilities that are near tribal lands or adjacent to tribal lands that are having impacts or could have impacts on the tribal community that you're concerned about, I would identify those and request the EPA include those in the inventory. So an example might be that maybe next to, in the adjacent state lands and adjacent county lands, there is a waste-to-energy incinerator, and you're concerned about the air emissions effects and also their storage of waste at that facility. And so if that's a permitted facility, it may, if it's a Title V permitted facility, then it's going to be included in the EPA's database. You ask them to include it in this inventory so that you and the EPA can monitor that on an ongoing basis, at least annually, for status changes. So one thing might be that if part of that inventory may include the status of their permit. So maybe it's a 4 or 5 year permit and it's up for renewal. And when it's up for renewal, you want to have the opportunity to provide some comments to the EPA about whether or not it should be renewed. By having it in this inventory, you keep it on your radar and the EPA's radar. And also, let's say there's a violation or you think there's been a violation. It's a little easier to call it to the EPA's attention and also say, look, we expressed this as already being a concern. This is happening right now. We believe there's a violation of their permit. It's in the inventory. We believe you should take an enforcement action. I feel like you'll have more leverage in getting the EPA to take an enforcement action if you've already made sure it's on their radar, that they're already aware of it. And then the inventory should be updated as appropriate, both as you're doing the initial review and as you are reviewing it, at least on an annual basis. So these updates should be the operational status changes. So, is there a new facility? Did a facility expand or close down? And, both on reservation and off reservation as well. So you want to make sure you're updating that inventory. And the presence of these regulated entities is going to determine which federal environmental statutes are going to be of concern for your tribe. So these are probably going to influence the EPA's priorities in component number 2. So as they are kind of determining their particular priorities and the activities that they're trying to identify under component number 2 in that separate document, they're going to probably look at this inventory and see, okay, well, is RCRA going to apply? Are we concerned about RCRA? Are there RCRA activities? Do we have any hazardous waste facilities? Do we have any hazardous waste transportation going on? Do we have any manifests and so things like that to identify whether there needs to be any kind of implementation associated with those federal statutes. So the steps here in a nutshell are the EPA is going to develop the inventory of regulated entities document in Region 9. The document the EPA is preparing is being called a regulated facilities inventory list. And let me show you an example of that. Again, I want to reiterate that the form of this document isn't that important. I'm gonna run through of what may be included in this list. What you may receive from the EPA, even if you're in Region 9, may look different. The thing is like they're going to submit you a list. You're going to review it, provide your feedback. It's going to essentially cover the same types of information. So there's the introductory information at the top, and then there's going to be statute by statute list of what where there may be regulated facilities. So under air quality, they're going to identify whether there's any minor or major source permits permitted or just major or minor sources. So I've deleted everything that from this tribal example, so I've mainly just put none for everything. But if there is something, then they'll indicate that. The air quality standards, they're going to indicate where everything is here. So is it attainment? Is it unclassifiable? Is it non-attainment? In one case, they may actually say it's being addressed or being changed. And then here, the status of inventories as well. So major sources, other sources. So the same thing for wetlands. Are there any MPDS permits? Any stormwater permits? What are your water quality status? Water quality standard status? And so this is going to be what the EPA knows. So if you look at these things and it says unknown, and that you're not pursuing that, then you let the EPA know that we do not plan on assuming TAS for water quality standards, and we don't plan on developing on water quality standards, or we do plan on developing water quality standards and or assuming TAS status for water quality standards. So you'll go through this for each of the areas. You have RCRA related stuff for regulated facilities, if there are open dumps, if you have any EPCRA or CERCLA related things going on here. There's some overlap with Clean Air Act as well, contaminated sites, brownfields, pesticides related things, and I believe underground storage tanks are included in here as well. So you'll get this document, review it, make sure it's accurate, provide your feedback to the EPA. So they'll submit the inventory to you, you review it and comment on it. You'll submit that back to the EPA, making sure you do check and update the status of the identified regulated entities and adding any missing ones and adding any additional ones you want to track that aren't included. So this will be, let's say, the things that are outside the tribe's jurisdiction, things on non-tribal lands that you want the EPA to keep track of as well. The EPA will update this inventory, incorporating the tribe's comments, and then this will be ready for the incorporation into the full ETEP package. All right, so let's go back to this workflow and just run through what this looks like. So here, and this is the EPA's their first task is going to be, this is, as I mentioned, this is the Region 9 sheet. So this language may not apply to you, but I believe the flow will apply to every region. So the EPA is going to develop the regulated, the inventory of regulated entities, what they're calling the regulated facilities inventory, and the areas of involvement document. So this is component, they're going to develop documents that meet the requirements of components 2 and 3. So the tribe's priority, the EPA's priorities, component 2, and then the inventory of regulated entities, component 3. From there, they're going to then submit that to the tribe, who's then going to review these documents and provide and share comments with the EPA. And then the EPA is going to incorporate those comments into those documents. And then it's ready to be incorporated into the final package. All right, so component number 4 doesn't involve a specific document like the other 3 do. It's more of, there's some more overlap with those other ones. So let's walk through what that means. So according to the GAP guidance, component number 4 involves defining the activities that are to be conducted by the tribe and the EPA. And these activities include what the tribe is going to do to support EPA's direct implementation of federal environmental programs. So the environmental programs, the environmental statutory programs that the EPA still has responsibility for, what the tribe is going to do to support the EPA in their direct implementation, and what the EPA is going to do to support the tribe in developing and implementing its priorities, its environmental programs. So obviously the EPA is going to determine what they're going to do to support the tribe. Hopefully they're going to be, trying to provide funding and technical assistance, and they're going to be maybe supporting in some other ways. And then what the tribe is going to do, either to apply for program approval or delegation. So this is, if the tribe's going to try to assume TAS, or is going to try to assume, delegation for doing underground storage tank inspections, and or build capacities to partner with the EPA to implement the applicable federal environmental programs. So, one way you may be partnering with the EPA is by doing education outreach on what's required to under the Clean Air Act or Clean Water Act, where the EPA still has direct implementation responsibility. So if the EPA has direct implementation responsibility over Clean Air Act permits, maybe there's a Title V permit on tribal trust lands for your tribe, and you're actually helping with the outreach to the operator to let them know what the federal requirements are. So that would be, you're developing the capacity to do this education outreach and to assist the EPA in this. So this will all be determined through discussions between the EPA and tribal staff. And then once these activities are decided, once you've decided that they're definitely going to be pursued, my recommendation is to include them into your ETEP Strategic Work Plan. So, that's the heart of what you were doing already. But when the EPA is going to do specific things within specific timeframes, I think that you should include those as well. And I'll show you what that means in a moment. You're also supposed to include, under component number 4 under the GAP guidance, it talks about including environmental program capacity indicators that are to be that the tribe intends to establish, plus a general timeline for establishing each capacity indicator. So, capacity indicators really are just objectives rewritten, but I actually recommend including the capacity indicator numbers, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So you have your capacity indicators as objectives, and then you have the associated capacity indicators included as well. Just remember that these are focused on, the capacity indicators are focused on GAP guidance, GAP eligible ones. The GAP guidance includes a lot of them, but there could be GAP eligible capacity indicators or objectives that are not currently included in the GAP guidance that EPA will fund. And this is part of the process of going through and identifying those. So if there's something that you couldn't identify, capacity indicator number 4, a particular objective that's going to achieve a particular capacity, you then can ask the EPA, well, is this GAP eligible? Can I receive GAP funding to do this? Or if not, what other funding sources possibly can I pursue? Are there any other EPA funding sources for that? And then you do want to include, so coming back to here, when you include the objectives, each objective, each EPA and tribal objective, you want to indicate whose role it is in the Tribal Environmental Plan. So let me show you an example of what that means. All right, so scrolling down here, you have in your objectives portion of the work plan, you have your year, you have conducting, you have the particular objective. This CI numbers, this is the capacity indicator number. So this is where there are one or more capacity indicators numbers that are already within the gap guidance that relate to the particular activity. You can include the capacity indicator numbers. So in this case, there is a capacity indicator number associated with developing, uh, doing an indoor air quality assessment, and that's C.3.10. So the next column is the role. So who's going to actually complete this objective? In this case, the tribe is going to conduct the indoor air quality assessment, not the EPA. But there'll be some that are the responsibility of both parties. So under role, really it's the tribe or the EPA. If you want to kind of specify staff members and internal departments, I would include those elsewhere, perhaps over here. So we have primary staff responsibilities. You may include departmental responsibilities if you have various departments working on things under this plan. But the EPA is not going to be concerned with that. It's not really, it's not required information to have that. It can be helpful. Okay, so, going down here, there's going to be particular things that are just the EPA's responsibility. I'm not sure I have any in this plan, but, let's say that in 2016, the EPA is going to develop the inventory of regulated entities, develop and provide inventory of regulated entities to tribe. So I believe there's probably a capacity indicator number associated with it. I don't know what it is off the top of my head. So this would probably be, I'd put this under general in terms of the area. So, but as you can see, I would gather that capacity indicator number from the gap guidance, and I would then assign, this is the EPA doing this. So reviewing and providing feedback to the EPA would be then a tribal objective that you probably do in the same year. I mean, it's up to you whether you want to include these as separate objectives. Obviously, these are kind of simple things to do. They may already be done, but review inventory of regulated entities and provide feedback to EPA. So that would be a tribal responsibility. Put that under general. Probably done in the same year. So one thing you could do, let's say I distinguish these as separate responsibilities. One thing you could do is, if you want to streamline things a little bit, is develop and provide so EPA, develop and provide that. Tribe will okay, so in this case, let's just say EPA and tribe. So I'm really, the focus here is just on just how you can distinguish roles within your ETEP strategic work plan. I just want to check real quick, just because my computer said it, everybody can still hear and see me okay, right? I just want to make sure, because I had that message pop up. I want to make sure it didn't actually cut me off on the webinar. Can somebody just respond in the questions and just say yes, that you can still hear me and see the presentation? And I'm going to keep moving forward. Hopefully somebody can do that in the meantime. Okay. So we've just got through the 4 components of the ETEP Strategic Work Plan, and there's still another kind of component you need to, well, there's another Another part of this you need to make sure you consider that requires a little bit of explanation, and that's the support of senior officials. So according to the GAP guidance, the ETEP should have the support of senior officials in both EPA and both the EPA and tribal governments. Interesting, I didn't click that. As they will be used to help prioritize the work that is funded. So this ETEP needs the support of both the EPA and tribal government. So the GAP guidance says support, but it doesn't say anything about a signed document. So it doesn't indicate that support needs to come in the form of a signature. So, you know, whether a signature is required may vary from region to region. I don't know what other regions are doing. I know in Region 9 this initially was kind of an issue where project officers were requiring a signature, but now the EPA is not, Region 9 is not requiring a signature, and I'll get more to that in a moment. Also, one thing that was happening in Region 9 is the project officers were working with the tribes to develop these work plans, or to actually develop GAP work plans that included doing the ETEPs that indicated that the tribe would provide a tribal council resolution, which I don't think should be required. I mean, getting a tribal resolution for this I don't think is necessary or appropriate, and it's for some tribes it can be particularly challenging to get a resolution. So an official means a person with the authority to support the ETEP. That's really all it means. And that's going to vary from tribe to tribe. So a tribal government senior official is one tribe is going to, a senior official for one tribe may be different than it will be for another. The person with this authority is going to be determined by the tribe. So in some instances, like your tribe may require chairman's support, quote unquote, for this. In other instances, like having the tribal administrators or the environmental director support may meet the tribe's definition of a senior official. I don't know what the EPA is who the senior official is going to be for the EPA. It doesn't really matter. Like they're going to include whoever they want on the document from their side. But one thing is that the ETEP is meant to be a living document, so I think that's it needs to be kept in mind when considering what form this support needs to take. So there should not be a rigid commitment to rigid goals and objectives, because these are supposed to change as circumstances change. They're supposed to be changing every year. So the support itself should be for a joint planning process. It should be a commitment to a joint planning process rather than to the specific goals and objectives. So if the tribe's stating that it's going to develop an integrated solid waste management, or it's going to update its integrated solid waste management plan in 2018, obviously that depends on whether it gets funding to do so. And that, that still is, the tribe still has the staffing, that's still a priority for the tribe. So that's going to change, or could change. So it's really about the joint planning process. So I have some language recommendations for whatever form this support takes. I would actually make sure that the document indicates that the ETEP is supposed to be a living and adaptable document. It doesn't have to state that it's not a rigid, there are no rigid commitments, but just make sure that language is included. I would also like to see a document that states that the tribal environmental plan can be changed by any time by the tribe, and it's going to change as circumstances and priorities change. And I would also like to see the document kind of somehow indicate or include language that shows that this support represents a commitment to the joint planning process rather than to the specific goals and milestones. So obviously, the EPA wants to see commitment to those goals and milestones, and it's not saying the tribe's not committed to pursuing those, but I think it's important that it's, the tribe and the EPA are aware that, things are going to change. These goals and milestones and objectives are going to change. In Region 9, I want to share the current requirements in Region 9. So in Region 9, the EPA is preparing the current requirements or the latest requirements are that EPA is actually preparing a cover memo for this, which is then supposed to go to the tribe for review, and then that cover memo is being bundled with other documents. The signature for that cover memo by the tribe is being stated as optional in Region 9. So the requirements for this are going to vary from region to region. In some regions, the tribe may actually need to take the lead on this. So the tribe may need to prepare some type of document or some type of letter stating their support for the ETEP. I don't know. It's your GAP project officer is going to talk about that with you. If it's an issue, if you feel like you should not have to provide a signature, which the GAP guidance doesn't require, if you're being told you need to provide a resolution or a letter signed by the chairperson and you feel like these are going to be too difficult to get, or they indicate a commitment that you don't feel like the tribe should have to make, then involve headquarters on this as well. So I feel like that they will support the perspective that at least a resolution should not be required for these. So let me just open this work plan up and just kind of show where this fits in. So in this case, in Region 9, we have EPA building the cover memo, and then the tribes reviewing the cover memo, and then all the documents are being bundled together, and the ETEP is finalized with a signature being optional. So as I mentioned, the building of the cover memo may actually be the tribe's responsibility depending on your region. I'd actually be curious if anybody has been told they need to do something differently. If you could just kind of type that in the questions box. I'm just kind of curious about what's been required. But it's just, this is a very simple part of the process. It's just like, being required to provide a tribal resolution or get a chairman's signature could be significant things for you, and you want to know about those and address those in the beginning if they are an issue. Okay, so then you have your final ETEP package, which is going to include that documentation of support of the senior and tribal and EPA officials. You're going to have your final tribal environmental plan. So that's component number 1. This is 95% of the work you're putting into this. This is going to be the most useful document you're going to want to use on an ongoing basis. With a reminder that this is a living document that is never actually final, and the tribe can change it at any time. This final package is going to include the documentation of the EPA's priorities regarding the federal environmental statutory programs that are applicable to the tribe. And there will also be the inventory of regulated entities, which meets the requirements of component number 3. And then component number 4, which is actually going to be addressed probably in components number 1 and number 2. So I don't believe this is going to include a standalone document, but for components number 2 and 3, you're going to be waiting on the tribe to take the lead on this. Component number 4, you can actually begin to include roles and responsibilities in your tribal environmental plan, and then see what the EPA then decides they want to do to address that. Okay, so that is the process of, this is the complete process of developing your ETEP and then submitting it to the EPA. So are there any questions on any part of this process before I spend some more time on doing the walkthrough of developing a tribal environmental plan? I don't see any questions. If you have any, feel free to enter them at any time or raise your hand or email them to me afterwards. All right, so I want to do some additional walkthrough for the last 15 minutes on developing your ETEP Strategic Work Plan. So this is the kind of this is the wrong one. Here's the walkthrough example that I've been doing, and I've been pulling stuff from various documents. So I just want to continue to do so to show you different documents. You can see where the stuff comes from. I want to first start by pulling some stuff from the gap guidance. So let's say, you review the gap guidance, scroll down a few pages. So you can see the table of contents here. And let's say that your tribe doesn't have anything under the chemical safety and pollution prevention programs right now, and you want to develop some capacities and pursue some objectives that build these capacities. So let's skip down to this guy, so page 38. And, in reviewing these, that's not 38. So almost there. Sorry if this is making you nauseous. All right, so you're down here and you're looking at the different capacities. You review these and you start to identify things that you want to do. So you've gone through it, you've highlighted it. So let's say one of the goals is, you want to obtain some funding, you want to obtain some training, and let's say you also want to do an asbestos. Let's say you want to do a pesticide needs assessment. And reviewing this, you think, well, I think we have some older buildings. We also want to do an assessment for asbestos and lead paint. Before committing to doing any kind of testing for those things, like we just want to do an evaluation of the buildings to see whether there's even the potential for those things. Let's see if there's anything else here. I mean, there might be other stuff. So, so let's just say you identified some things in here that you want to incorporate in your plan. So, just copying and pasting this into a document won't really work because this isn't really phrased in the isn't phrased as an objective. So, tribe has completed a pesticides needs assessment. That's past tense. That means you've already done it. Tribe has completed an asbestos and lead-based paint assessment. So I would say those probably be two separate objectives anyways. Pesticides, you probably focus on outdoor stuff. Asbestos and lead paint, I would say you can combine into one. So let's just say you want to include those as objectives. One resource you have is either you can copy and paste those and just reword them to be more affirmative actions. Another thing you can do is you can actually utilize the the catalog, the ETEP catalog that I've developed. So this is on the Google Docs. You can download it. I've actually downloaded it into a spreadsheet, and I've restated all the gap guidance capacity indicators as affirmative, as objectives. So like you can filter that out. You can go to the gap guidance capacity indicators, and if you want to search for, let's say, G.3.4 is what you want to include. So G.3.4, search down here. So okay, so now you have language that says, this is more of like something you're going to do. So you can copy and paste this. Actually, you can copy and paste both because you want the capacity indicator number anyways. You go to your plan. You paste it there. You may want to reword stuff some. So, under your current programs, this is text only. So under your current program, just to see how this fits, does this fit under water, waste, air? So let's just say, like, you're going through this process and now, you want a new toxics category because you don't feel like this fits under anything else. So obviously you'd have to go and you develop goals and objectives for toxics as well. This is going to be a tribal responsibility. You want to complete two different assessments. So you want to have an assessment that's focused on, let's actually undo that, sorry. This is real world stuff right here. I'm making mistakes in Excel. So you just want to focus on asbestos and lead-based paint. So you just modify that, complete that assessment, needs assessment, that collects and evaluates existing data on you can even just remove that. So it collects and evaluates existing data and other relevant factors, assesses the need to develop related projects and or programs, and evaluates short and long-term options to identify those needs. So that's a good solid objective. I would probably add prepare assessment report. So you have an objective right there. Let's say, you don't have funding to start up toxic stuff this year, but you think that, and you've just submitted your GAP grant for 2017, but you think you can get this started in 2018. So you enter that there. So let's say you want to also do one for focused on pesticides as well. Then I would just change this to pesticides, just to distinguish and say like these are separate assessments. So then you have that. And you could decide, we don't want to do the pesticides one in 2018. 2018, the asbestos and lead-based paint is more of a priority. We don't think we could actually do both assessments in 1 year. That sounds like too much work. Let's put that in 2019. And then you enter that. And then you can enter some categories. This is going to be probably, I'm going to put, my own categories are going to be studying. And they're not repeat activities. So you've now included some things from the GAP guidance into your plan. So this is like just, you just repeat this process for everything you want to include. So you read through here and you can decide, do we want to include these anywhere in the next 4 years? Or do we want to do it but it doesn't fit in the next 4 years? So we'll include it as a possible activity. So, a complete inventory of asbestos might be something you want to include as well. So you can add that. In the future, you could add as a possible activity. So those are things you repeat over and over again. So that's an example of pulling stuff from GAP guidance. So another example of where else you can pull some information are other grant proposals. So I'm going to open now fiscal year 2016 Tribal Wildlife Grant Program, and I'm going to, if you want to get ideas for other objectives you want your environmental office to do, try to find funding sources and look through those to identify what they fund. That's a good way to set yourself up for the future to apply for funding to do these things. So, we'll go here, we'll go down to page 2, which, what types of projects will be funded. So this particular RFP, I've reviewed it. It doesn't include like, it doesn't have a separate kind of list of activities. They have one right here. So you can go through here and you can decide if you want to include any of these particular activities into your ETEP Strategic Work Plan. So do you want to do some planning for conservation of fish and wildlife and their habitats? So you're like, that sounds like a good idea. Yeah, we want to develop, we'll just copy and paste this here. You got to restate it. So develop I'm going to say a habitat, a wildlife and habitat management plan, or a habitat conservation plan. Yeah, we'll say that. So let's develop wildlife and habitat conservation plan. So you now have that as an objective. So right now, you got to consider, when do you want to apply for that funding? I would say that you're probably, considering you're going to have to apply for it in September, which means you'll get funding probably for the following year. So I'm going to actually, we can put 2018, probably more like 2019. So we go over here and look at capacity indicators. What I do with these things is I tend to try to add capacity indicators even if I don't know if they're going to be applicable. So let's go back to this catalog where I've included this stuff. So what's nice about this catalog that I've created is you can kind of search. So I'm just going to put funding. Let's see what comes up. Identify and pursue and secure funding from other sources. So there's actually a specific capacity indicator in the gap guidance to do that. So I believe, I'd like to hope that the EPA would be willing to fund me under gap to do that. So actually, you know what? Yeah, so developing this plan might actually not, it's not funny. You'd actually have that under B.3, you'd have that under the activity to pursue funding. As you can see before, I have like identify, pursue, and secure funding for specific programs. If you wanted to call out some specific funding activity, then you could say in 2016, we're going to identify, pursue, and secure funding to develop a wildlife and habitat conservation plan. So I would think that this would be eligible. So as I mentioned, this is B.8.3. And this may be a new program as well. So this is obviously something the tribe's going to do. Let's say, you know what, this doesn't seem to fit under the other programs. Maybe it fits underwater, but maybe you want to have like a separate program area called natural resources. And then you'd want to make sure you had a description and goals for that. Okay, so this is going to be natural resources. Oops, this is going to be natural resources. Sometimes Excel, my computer doesn't like Excel sometimes, but so, you've then included develop wildlife and habitat conservation plan. You could try to see if this fits under any of the gap guidance capacity indicators. It probably doesn't. I mean, the EPA is not going to, I'm almost positive the EPA is not going to fund you in developing a wildlife and habitat conservation plan. You could see, but it's something that you want your department and your staff to do. You should include it in this plan. So you then add that, and you can go back here and identify anything else you want to do as well. So another thing you could do is you could go to these examples of wildlife grants that the tribal wildlife grants that have been actually been funded, and you can read what other people have done to come up with ideas for objectives as well. And then one other thing I want to show you too is just, here's another thing. This is an energy plan I found online as an example. You may have an energy plan and you may decide that you want to have some energy related objectives included within your plan. So, you can go in here and you can find some things you're planning on doing. So let's see. So you just go through this document. If you have an energy plan already developed and the environmental department's responsible for implementing some of the stuff in the energy plan, then you'd want to go through this and find out what types of things you're going to be implementing. So it's probably under implementation calendar, task teams, and participants. So you go find stuff from there as well. There's also energy related stuff in the catalog too. So let's go back here. Let's unfilter this. And then let's go category. Sorry. Let's go category energy. And then you can find some objectives of things you want to do here. So, these are all just examples. So just keep in mind that this catalog is just examples. It doesn't mean that the EPA will fund these things. It just means that these are examples of things you could be doing. So let's say you want to conduct a feasibility study on solar development for tribally owned facilities, And I like to just put things in here that indicate that maybe it could somehow uh, fall under the gap guidance. I mean, it's worth asking. It's worth seeing if the EPA will do it. Oops. So let's do that. Nope. Sorry. Okay, so we put that in there. You got to decide what year you want to pursue that. So let's say we want to pursue that study in 2018, and now you have this in your plan as well. So the process of developing your plan is just going through, identifying these things, copying and pasting, and then I showed, I believe, it was last time of like going through and then identifying which ones you want to actually do or not. So that's the end of the presentation today. Are there any more questions? And let's just actually, it's not the end of the presentation quite yet. So the next steps are there's going to be 2 more modules. The assignments are going to be the same. I don't have any additional assignments beyond, so there are no additional assignments for components 2, 3, or 4. So continue working on what's already been assigned. Remembering that you can also complete the strategic planning questionnaire that I made available during the last module, and I will be sending an email with the assignments material soon and the video. And so that's the end of this module. Please, when I close it, you'll be directed to an evaluation. Please complete that and help me improve, and I will see you next time.